Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rhit Moore, past master and current secretary at Fort Worth 148.
This is Billy Hamilton, senior steward for 148.
And this is Gabriel Jagush, Master Mason with Fort Worth 148.
Well, it's good to be back, boys. We seem to always be having to tackle some technical issues, but lo and behold, we're on and ready to rock and roll.
Yep, this episode is brought to you by the power of cell phone Wi-Fi hotspots. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah. I know I'm juiced up. Gabe and I, we saw a great presentation last night. And, oh, my goodness. I don't know about you, Gabe, but it charged me up.
Yes, we went to Webb Lodge last night over on Zoofelt Drive in Arlington. And we went and saw a presentation by Brother Larry Fitzpatrick about the Hiramic myth. So, if you're a Master Mason, you're at least somewhat familiar with the Hiramic myth. And he went and dissected this. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen something that thorough in terms of the perspective he took on it. He tackled it from an astrological perspective, and it was absolutely fascinating.
Oh, it was phenomenal. I mean, because you say dissect. I mean, it was the most professionally done dissecting I've ever seen. That guy, I mean, and he had his sources, and it was fantastic. Some of the explanations he had for stuff.
Yeah, so he's on the Grand Lodge Education Committee, or is it the Education Committee, or is it how?
Yeah,
what is their official
he's the chairman
title?
This year.
Yeah, so if you can if y'all reach out to the Education Committee, or if you know Larry and you reach out to him, get him to come and talk to your lodge about this kind of stuff. Absolutely fascinating.
Oh yeah. Wear 2 pairs of socks because he'll blow one off for sure. And he lives in the DFW area and is in the Grand Lodge directory under Committee of Education. Hit him up. He loves doing it. And it was so thorough. And of course it was Master Masons only, but still you gotta study that ritual as well. Oh man, it was so good. From when he was explaining the key to the lost word and all that. Oh my goodness. It'll get you going. Out of all of that, the thing that got me that I just couldn't quit thinking about is how he explained that vows were like the noises of the gods or whatever. They would sing ancient hymns and vowel sounds.
Yes.
Because your lips never touch, and it's just like that. That was like nail in the coffin. I could have went another 2 hours listening to him.
It was really something. It was just really something. And I mean, he broke down the ritual of the 3rd degree down to zodiac signs. He said, this means this sign, this is this sign, this is this sign. All of these correspond to certain times of year. All of these times of year correspond to certain virtues and aspects of the human, mind that we are supposed to cultivate and inculcate, and just wow, blew my mind.
Oh,
very cool.
When he went through the 7 vices and the 7 virtues, woo-wee. It was just like everything started coming together and making so much more sense. And I mean, it was an hour. What were we in there? About an hour and a half or so?
We were in there for about 2 hours. I think maybe a little bit longer, actually.
But still, I mean, it just took Masonic. I mean, because it starts melding it all together. Because he had some passion for it and has done his research, so it's well worth having him out. Or next time you hear about it happening, him giving the presentation, make the trip.
Mm-hmm. And we wanted to give a shout out to Webb Lodge for hosting him and for doing dinner beforehand. It's a part of the Beehive program that they're hosting. They're focusing on an educational program out there. So it's just phenomenal stuff.
And totally hats off to those guys because, it's hard for a lodge to do that kind of stuff on that scale on a monthly basis. But if we have 31 lodges here in Tarrant County. If we could get 8 of them doing it, once a quarter, or twice a year, that's 16 presentations if we do twice a year. Mm-hmm. And guys are hungry for it.
So I'm excited about that. It'd be real nice to see.
Absolutely. So definitely hats off to Webb Lodge. They've got some good stuff going. They have received dispensation for a parade in Arlington. Let's see.
Yes.
Arlington's
worshipful brother Mark was telling me about it last night.
Yeah. So November 11th. Let's see. Yeah, November 11th. It'll be at 2 p.m. and you can just contact Webb Lodge. They're on Facebook, but they're going to be in the parade. He's going to be pulling the float with his old tractor, but he received dispensation to wear aprons. So Bring your nice, pretty apron.
And just to be clear, now this is kind of significant, right? It's the Arlington, City of Arlington's Heroes Day Parade for veterans. And what's really neat about the dispensation that Brother Mark has gotten from Grandmaster Kirby is that all Texas Masons have received dispensation to do this, not just Webb Lodge. If you are a Texas Mason, you can fly in from El Paso if you want to, and you will have dispensation to march in the parade. So, guys, this is a big deal. We usually don't get opportunities to do this kind of stuff. The fact that it's all Texas Masons is also pretty significant. That's really cool. I'll be marching in a parade out in Weatherford, but if I get done with that, I am rushing over to go march in this one with my apron because, man, this is cool. So if you can and you're free on that day, contact Webb Lodge, via Facebook or email or whatever. WEBB. They're out on Zoofelt Drive in Arlington, and just talk with them and let them know that, hey, I'd like to do this. Where are y'all meeting up? So it's a big deal.
No doubt. I mean, if there were a bunch of us to show up, that'd be a sight to see.
Yep. So
what do we got next? You got any questions?
Yes, I do. I've got some questions. This one was a question that was asked of me personally, and but isn't Freemasonry / aren't Freemasons Gnostic, and isn't that against Christianity? And this is just a really quick answer. It's not really a discussion; it's just more of a clarification. No, Masonry is not Gnostic, and Freemasons. Some of them might be Gnostic, but not all of them, because Masonry is non-sectarian. It doesn't ascribe to any one religion, and brothers can be of any religion that they choose to subscribe to. Depends on your jurisdiction, but yeah, within reason, according to your legal limitations, I guess.
Yeah. No, and I think that's something that we need to do a better job of is informing the public that we are not a religion, nor do we prescribe to one. So
we just have that one simple, qualifier before you join is, do you believe in a higher power? And that's it.
Yeah. And so kind of going into a tangent or this one, or I guess tying this in, this is a question I saw on Reddit. What would you say about a Freemason that says he worships the devil? Is that valid to you? Does that count?
Well, I mean, if we're talking technicalities, he has to believe in a deity. So if that's his deity, fine. But the catcher is just because you believe in a deity doesn't mean you get in.
That's true.
First and foremost, you have to maintain peace and harmony in your lodge. So if you're going to knowingly vote somebody into your lodge that's going to cause all kinds of strife, well, shame on you, because you have a duty to the guys that are already brothers to maintain peace and harmony. But I would think it might be hard, and I don't know a lot about that religion per se, but I would think it'd be hard to have the character to be a Mason. I'm not for sure about Satanism, but I don't think they preach brotherly love, relief, and truth. But I could be wrong.
I would also ask, I guess really there's two different kinds of Satanists out there, right? You have those who really believe that they're worshiping a dark power, and it's almost like the antithesis of Christianity and everything.
Yeah.
But then you have those like people who are Church of Satan. To me, whenever I talk to them, it seems like they're not really religious. They're just kind of trolling religion, almost like they're making fun of whatever the hot button is, with or whatever. But either way, I think it'd be kind of hard to reconcile that with, I guess, what it is that we're trying to do here in Masonry.
Yeah, because ultimately, they're probably atheists if they're just poking fun. So if you do your due diligence, you're going to figure all that stuff out and you vote accordingly.
Yeah. And so for me, the big dividing line is theistic versus atheistic Satanism. And then there's, within atheistic Satanism, there's kind of two camps, kind of. There's the philosophical atheistic Satanism, which is more traditional. It's basically it's atheistic, but it's more focused on the self, on reflection and everything like that. It's more of a code of honor, that kind of thing. And then there's the activist atheistic Satanism, which that's like Church of Satan, where they deliberately, like, they'll sue courthouses that put up the 10 Commandments and stuff because of equal representation of religion, which that's kind of an interesting concept. I kind of dig it. But and then there's theistic Satanism, which they actually worship some sort of, depending on the branch, they worship either the devil or something that they call the devil. Obviously the atheistic, both branches of atheistic Satanism are disqualified because you have to believe in God to be a Mason. I think that, so under Texas law, you have to have a belief in God, a belief in the immortality of the soul, and a set of holy scriptures that you ascribe to be divine truth. If you can find all of that as a theistic Satan, then you technically qualify for that. There might be other things on the form that you don't qualify for, but I think that you would be deeply unhappy in a Masonic lodge because,
I mean, it's a scenario that if ever happened, I mean, in Texas, if they wrote that on the petition, it'd end up in one spot, on the round filing cabinet.
For multiple reasons, obviously we're not talking about any one candidate, so this is legal for me to say. But if a theistic Satanist candidate applied for membership within lodge, and I was on the investigative committee, or if I was voting, I would either not recommend my investigation, or I would, drop a blackball. And not because I don't think people shouldn't be theistic Satanists or whatever, but because that's just, from a very fundamental standpoint, seems just super incompatible with Masonry.
Yeah, and that's what I say. You do your due diligence, you're going to figure that out real quick. And, peace and harmony. Yeah. You got to maintain it. I saw that thread on Facebook as well, and there were so many comments. I was like, scroll past that one.
Yeah,
it's
good
funny
stuff.
what we get hung up on, and it's fun to talk about, because there's some education and laid in there, but it's a scenario that probably no lodge will have to go through, or very few anyway.
I really can't think of a case where that would be a common thing.
Yeah, exactly. We moving on to content now?
Yeah, let's talk about content. So this week we're talking about Masonic Symbolism 102, and that's because we couldn't pack everything into last episode.
Actually, I ran across something after we recorded the last episode that I wish I would have known about while we recorded.
Ooh.
And it was about the cable tow, actually. It's actually based on a Hebrew word, kabel,
Ooh.
which means a rope or a cord, but it's actually used in the Bible several times. It's used in Ezekiel 18, Job 22, and the way they use it is to symbolize that it's their pledge. So they use kabel to signify, pledge that someone is bound to.
Oh,
so in
wow.
a way, the cable tow is the length of your cable tow is the length of your pledge that you're honor bound to.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's good stuff, and it makes total sense too.
Oh man, I love it. That's awesome.
I don't even know why they don't tie that in our degrees.
Yeah, that should be something that's kind of like, by the way, like, this is the origin of this word.
Yeah. It will forever be in my explanations now. No, that's great. Yeah, because, what does a rope do? It binds you to something. It's total
That's
sense.
pretty
Good stuff,
legit.
Billy. Yeah. No doubt. So where did we decide to pick up? Where did we leave off last time?
I think we are starting off with the discussion of light.
Ah, yes. And if you're wondering, we're totally Robin Lightfoot. That's been
guys,
our
like, for
outline
all
for
those
these last few podcasts.
Yeah, we're just riffing on the commentaries at this point. It's okay. We got carried away and we're enjoying ourselves.
Exactly. I love Lightfoot, how he makes light into a bigger deal than typically, you just say, what is light? That's wisdom. That's knowledge. But, he takes it a lot deeper, which something that he points out too, that the first time I read this, I was like, that's right. That is the first symbol we see as a new Master Mason. Or a new Mason, I should say, because as an EA, it's the same thing. You just get different levels of it as you go forward. Just definitely interesting because, you don't think of that as a Masonic symbol. But yet it is.
Yeah, and it's common to, basically all the old mystery schools and everything like that. I think Masonry is one of the few organizations that, Masonry and other fraternities are one of the few organizations that still do that, because that's still very common with collegiate fraternities, everything like that, and probably a lot of the other fraternal orders outside of college. So it's a very common symbol, and it's very effective.
It's overlooked. It kind of hides out in the shadows, if you will. But Lightfoot talking about how it encompasses basically all the symbols of Masonry, because when you're wielding all those tools properly, and all the teachings, that's what you're dispensing light. It's kind of like the culmination of using, the Masonic teachings and whatnot, all properly, to where you not only receive but spew it.
I like the fact in Lightfoot's commentaries how he talks about in the ancient Egyptians, the priest adopted the hair as the symbol of moral illumination.
Mm-hmm.
Hair, they thought that its eyes were always open, and that the word for was really the same as the word for light, and that it even then made its way into the Hebrew language, and that the word was a combination which meant the sea. So,
yeah, I have it pulled up here. And in the Hebrew, it's, let me mispronounce this real quick, Arnabet, which is a compound of Aur, which is light, and Nabat, which is to see. So that's just, that passage is incredible.
So when you said the hair, we're talking about a rabbit, right?
Yeah.
The Easter bunny?
Jackrabbit, yeah.
Well, that's immediately where my mind went, because, of course, the Easter Bunny's been a part of that time forever. And I've always been told it's because of fertility, that spring's coming and things are going to start blooming, which makes sense. But it also makes sense that it's the coming of light, basically that the days are getting longer. It's going to start getting warmer. If, the Egyptians attributed to light. The old and they rabbit.
Also associated the hair with Osiris too, which also be said to be one in the older versions. I to Diluvian Masonry, which is also associated with Osiris being one of the three masters.
That makes a lot of sense after the presentation last night.
That's true.
We talked a lot about those guys.
And it's really interesting to see the way that light plays into the whole discussion of Masonic symbolism, especially. So, for, the very short summary of Larry Fitzpatrick's talk is that the Hiramic myth is very, actually, I would say it's inextricable from the passage of the sun throughout the year. And I'm not going to give the details of how that goes just because most secrets, and I don't want to spoil the talk for anybody that's going to go listen to it. But we talk about the symbolism and everything like that, and then the third story that we tell in Lodge focuses solely on the giver of light, the sun. It's just a fascinating sort of idea.
Yeah. No, and I mean, you can see where it, where light got revered so much because, I mean, when that sun started coming back around, that was an important time. Not only do you get warm, but it's time to restock the coffers and prepare for winter already. Knowing that when light was coming, that was important.
Yeah. And one of the important things about light is, going back to last week, we talked about the rite of circumambulation and how important that is. And one of the things that we do, we mentioned it last time, when the candidate goes around the room, he symbolically represents the sun traveling around, traveling around the room. He's shining light on different parts of the day. And if we look at this from a pre-heliocentric perspective, and look at it, as like an Earth-centric solar system, like you are part of the solar system. If like the altar and the Holy Bible are the center, then you are the sun traveling around the Earth. But obviously Galileo told us different.
It's so for me, so reminiscent of the, as above, so below. There's so many mysteries to be unlocked and all that. And it comes in the form of light as far as Masons are concerned. I'm just looking through at Lightfoot's commentaries about it, and it's like 3 pages long, and when you ask when we're talking about Masonic light, what are we talking about? Somebody says, well, wisdom, knowledge, and it's so much deeper than that.
Yeah, it just keeps going. Well, one of the important things about light is that light also creates darkness. Or I guess maybe light doesn't necessarily create darkness because darkness is just the absence of light, but it brings attention to darkness. And you have this dichotomy of without light there is darkness. We give people light as part of the initiatic experience. So, that's actually something that Lightfoot talks about, is that people who haven't received that light are figuratively out in the dark. And also it brings to mind kind of the dual nature of evil and good, right? For example, you have light. Light is good and it's wholesome and it gives life. And then you have darkness, which is cold and it takes away life and it absorbs heat. But I thought it was really interesting the way that he looked at it from the Zoroastrian perspective. He was saying, so the opposite conditions in which man thus found himself induced him to imagine the existence of two antagonistic principles to whose dominions he was alternately subjected. Such was the dogma of Zoroaster, the great Persian philosopher who, under the name of Ormuzd and Ahriman, symbolized those two principles of light and darkness. And so he talks about a couple of other religions that are dualistic in nature, but it is kind of an interesting sort of thing that we see about, like, we have, God and the devil, or, virtues and sins, and night and day, and you see it even on the checkered pavement. So it's just kind of a neat sort of discussion.
How it's always light's good, dark is bad.
Which,
there's no monsters in the closet when it's light outside, but when it gets dark, all of a sudden monsters are in the closet.
Well, and isn't it great then that you have a senior deacon to take care of you when it's dark?
Oh, exactly.
But so the bit he says about Pythagoras is great. He says, Pythagoras also maintained this doctrine of two antagonistic principles. He called the one unity, light, the right-handed, equality, stability, and a straight line. The other, binary, darkness, the left hand, inequality, instability, and a curved line. Of all the colors, he has attributed white to the good principle and black to the evil one. And so this is a truly ancient idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's very reminiscent of the checkered pavement. I mean, that's essentially what that is all about. Your light and dark checkers representing good and evil.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I thought it was interesting that if you kind of look at the checkered pavement, right, like you look at checkerboard or, like a tile, there's an even amount of light and dark. There's a balance between the two. And I thought that was kind of interesting because maybe I don't know that it's helpful to look at a lack of light as being dark, or like a lack of good being evil necessarily. Because a lot of times we look at the checkerboard as being, or checkered pavement, or however, because there's a billion different ways to symbolize it, as being a balance of evil and good. But, I don't know that we really want to balance evil in our lives, right? We want to be good.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if evil is the wrong way to think about it. Billy, what's up?
Actually, and since you and I are both going through the Scottish Rite, one of the degrees that I'm going to participate in really is about that balance. It's relatively necessary. It really talks about without that darkness, right? Now, light doesn't stand out. They are both necessary. This duality. Even when you read the book, right? The book is two colors. You have the color of the print, and then you have the color of the background. You can't really appreciate the print without being able to contrast it against the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, and I've always, because you're right, to say the checkered pavement represents good and evil is a little harsh. And maybe a better way to put it is it's the good times and the bad times of life, maybe the turbulent, times that kind of suck you the wrong way. Because, when it comes down to good and evil, all Masons should recognize that is inherent in everybody. And you're going to have people that lean one way to the other. And it all comes down to your environment and the people you hang out with. And, as far as your character is going to develop. But when it comes to the checkered pavement, that's going to be more of the good and bad than it would be evil. Because you're right. I mean, we're not, as a Mason, we're traversing the checkered pavement. So we're going to cross black tiles. And to say that's the evil part's a little harsh, because we're all doing the 2-step when we're trying to improve, 2 steps forward, 1 back, and it happens.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Without the bad, there is no good. It's our yin and yang, I guess.
Yeah, what you were saying about the writing in the books, you have the print is black and the page is white, and you have to have the contrast to see the difference between the two, the light and the dark. One of the interesting things that made me think about was that, and I'm totally blanking on which text this was, but one of the things that is talked about in Kabbalistic tradition is that when Moses received the word of God on the mountain, it was written to him in the air as fire and not fire, right? Like, it's literally just like the letters of, and I still have a hard time wrapping my brain around this idea, but like they were talking about literally like the whole book or all of the knowledge that he received in text format was written in fire. And, but you can't determine what the words are if there's no blank space, so it kind of makes sense. There's fire, that true light, and then there's not fire. But
yeah, you got to have the contrast. No, that's a great point.
Yeah, and that kind of made me also think about when you look at the Tanakh and other Hebrew texts like the Torah and all that, it's kind of thinking about the contrast between something that's there and something that's not there, is that a lot of times it's important to see how closely spaced together the Hebrew words are. Because a lot of times it's actually easy to take a passage in Hebrew and construct different words out of it without rearranging any of the letters, because the spaces between the words are close enough that you can look for other words and other meanings in the text based off of that. So kind of an interesting idea is that maybe in order to have clearer, concrete meanings, you also have to have that darkness or that gap between the light, the words.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, because, if there was no contrast, it would just be gray, right?
Just on a basic level, right? How interesting would your life be if you always got everything you want?
Yeah.
It'd be worthless.
It seems legit, but when you really think about it, it would get miserable.
Well, and that reminds me kind of like what Teddy Roosevelt talks about in the, in How to Live a Good Life. He talks about, I'd really rather go out and do stuff and totally, screw up and fail and, but at least I tried. And he talks about people that don't at least try to go do great things. He talks about them living in like a gray sort of existence,
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. So it's interesting that you bring the shade of gray thing up, because it brought to mind that Teddy Roosevelt quote about, go and actually try things, don't live in a gray life.
Yeah. Don't be timid. No, I saw somebody put on there the other day about millionaires that 98% of them have filed bankruptcy at least twice. So there's going to be bad times and there's going to be good times.
Yeah. Well, and even for us little people too,
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about signs and tokens. What's a sign?
I know they're mocking up the scenery. No, a sign is a way for a Master Mason to recognize another. Either like in old times, they would have signs that they would put on, or marks that they would put on that were in certain formats that you'd be like, okay, yeah, that guy's a Master Mason. And we still do the same thing, like our square and compass rings. They throw out the proper sign that's required for us to recognize other Master Masons.
Right. And so this is something that has kind of existed with every secret society that's ever been. Every secret society has either hand signs or like some sort of signal that, whether it's from the ring to kind of bring up a really risque sort of example, hanky codes in the gay community in San Francisco during the 1960s and 70s. That was a thing,
Mm-hmm.
People had to have some way of signaling to others that, like, hey, I'm part of this group.
Yeah.
And sometimes it wasn't always safe.
Yeah, and that's definitely where it originated from. And of course, we still use it today because, of course, the signs don't get you into lodge, but they get you recognized as a brother to where you can then in turn give the token that's required to get you into lodge.
Mm. And sometimes, we'll have the hand signs, like there is a hand sign that Master Masons use to signal to others that they're in danger, and that's not a secret. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it's a red flag of a certain kind. And if you're a Master Mason and you see somebody giving that sign, you stop, you pull over, right? Because something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes, there's the recognition aspect of it, which is important. And then there's also the utility of it, which is phenomenal. When you're traveling abroad and everything like that, your signs and tokens may be kind of different, but at least back in the old days, that's how they recognized each other.
Yeah. And, I've always, because there's many meanings to the signs that we use and secrets that we have, but it is such a unique way to bind a group of people together in such a way that it wouldn't otherwise. And I always use the example of when we were kids and you had the secret knock to get into the club, and, you and your brothers or, cousins or whatever knew it, and y'all thought y'all were something cool. It's like, oh yeah, we know that only the people with the secret knock can get in, which, kind of silly in the end, but it created a bond there that wasn't there otherwise. And for me, knowing that I can give that sign and I could get help if there's a brother around gives me a sense of camaraderie that wouldn't be there otherwise. Although I've never used it and hopefully never will have to.
Yeah. Here's an example of some interesting signs that Lightfoot talks about. He also says, and the other writers confirm the statement, that in the Middle Ages, the monks had a system of signs by which they were enabled to recognize the members of their different orders. So does Apelius? I don't know, I'm saying that wrong. So does Apuleius describe the action of one of the devotees of the mystery of Isis, and says, he walked faintly, with a hesitating step, the ankle of the left foot being slightly bent, in order, no doubt, that he might afford some sign by which he might recognize him. So, Rhit, how do you feel about walking around with your ankle crooked?
I don't know about that, but I mean, I guess if I had the mysteries of Isis, I might.
Yeah, good luck finding those.
Yeah, exactly. But no, that's interesting. They had like they had a lead in. You got to do a little curtsy, and it's like, oh, okay, here comes the next part.
So when I say, okay, let's say outside of Masonic symbolism, when I say token, what comes to mind to you outside of Masonic symbolism?
Oh, immediately I think of Chuck E. Cheese.
Yes, like an arcade token.
Yes, immediately. I think of playing some skee ball, baby.
A specific device that doesn't mean anything outside of that building, right? Even if it's Chuck E. Cheese, that Chuck E. Cheese token won't get you anything anywhere else. But if you use it in the right way, you get something from it.
Oh, look at you.
Yep.
Balls, right? But it's something that means nothing to no one else. But for you, for that moment, you gain what you're searching for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to think about it. Yeah.
To anyone who's taken the Mark Master Mason degree, it's kind of interesting to think about a Chuck E. Cheese token, because the Chuck E. Cheese token, it theoretically, providing you didn't steal it from some poor 6-year-old, the Chuck E. Cheese token shows that you spent a quarter at a machine and you played that game and you won tickets or whatever. Or I guess the Chuck E. Cheese ticket is, the equivalent, but the token allows you to play that game. And then the ticket, is proof that you played that game. And the ticket is worth something when you turn it in. It's a symbol of your completed work. And it entitles you to receive your wages.
Well, I mean, I'm reading the definition of token out of the monitor, and it says anything indicative of something, of some other thing. So
that's very specific.
The token is showing that you have done other things.
And
which
also
in a sense, that's kind of what you've given a quarter to somebody and they gave you a token.
Yeah.
You took the degrees. In each degree, you get a different token.
Which, in our context, is usually a handshake of some kind.
Mm-hmm. No, because if you would have asked me 30 seconds ago what a token is, I would have said, it's a kind of handshake. But it, according to our definition, it's not. Of course, it culminates into that. That's what we choose to use as our token to prove we have received something different, something else. So that token proves that we have received the EA, fellowcraft, or master's degree.
And more importantly, I think that it also shows that if I give you a token of a Master Mason, or the grip of a Master Mason, if we want to get more ritualistic in terms of terminology, you recognize what it is because you are a Master Mason. If you are not a Master Mason, you might have a guess of what it is, but you're not going to recognize it for what it is. So when you recognize it and I give it to you, it means that you're entitled to all of the rights that I can give you through the virtue of you having that degree, and I'm entitled to all of the rights that you can give me through virtue of having that degree. So it's not just, hey, I have this, but it's also, hey, I have certain rights because of this, and so do you.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what it means. When they give you that, you understand what it means. You have a similar experience that you can share back on and go, oh, that token means that he's done X, Y, Z, turned in proficiency, all that. And he's received enough light in his life and experience to realize that. Same thing as the Chuck E. Cheese token. You give it to a 1-year-old or something. They don't know what it is. You give it to a 5-year-old and it'll make their day.
Exactly. Oh hell, I'm 26 and it'll still make my day.
I know it.
The terminology behind it, like the actual language, is awesome. This is more, obviously we're just reading from Lightfoot en masse, but this is kind of our journey through the commentaries. The word token is derived from the Anglo-Saxon taken, which means a sign, presage, type, or representation, that which points out something. And this is traced to tokian, to teach, show, and instruct, because by a token we show or instruct others as to what we are. The Hebrew word oath is frequently used in Scripture to signify a sign of something past, some covenant made or promise given. In Masonry, the grip of recognition is called a token because it is an outward sign of the covenant of friendship and fellowship entered into between the members of the fraternity. And so it's kind of interesting to see that dual definition there. We have one definition that's very explicit on this is related to teaching. And there's the other definition, which is related to a covenant being made. And so I think that's just really kind of cool, especially when you look at that thing that we kind of talked about, hey, I'm entitled to this, you're entitled to that. Specifically when you look at the Master Mason's grip and the way, for anybody that doesn't know, and this is not giving anything away, the Master Mason's word can only be given with the Master Mason's grip. And you can look it up on the Texas Grand Lodge Law Book if you like. That's public information. It's actually a disciplinary violation to even say the Master's word without giving the Master's grip. That's the only way it can be communicated. And each part of the Master's token is symbolic of a bunch of promises that we make to each other. So it's really cool to see that because we have to explain all those promises, so that's the teaching, and then the promises is a reminder of that covenant that we entered into each other as brothers. Just great stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that we chose that. I'm curious if that's always been the token, is the grip. It makes sense because it could have been anything. It could have been a coin, like a Chuck E. Cheese token, but we chose a unique grip.
Yeah, well, and the nice thing about a grip or a handshake and a word, that kind of stuff, is that it can't be, somebody might witness it and copy it, but it can't be stolen from you, which that's the important part. I think when you're traveling out in a foreign country and you need to prove that you are a Master Mason, the worst thing that could have happened to you in those times would have been, you wake up in the morning, from sleeping under a tree or wherever on your way to, let's say, Jerusalem, and you wake up and
you left your dues card.
Left your dues card at home. How bad would that be? So that's why we have to have those non-material signs and tokens, I think.
Yeah, and if you really think about it, back then, being a Mason, there were times when it wasn't exactly the friendliest thing, but more especially they held big secrets. So you didn't want to go around town. Yeah, I got all this information that could make you rich. Come extort it out of me.
And it's actually kind of going on a tangent, but the non-physical part is also very liberating because otherwise we'd have to do it, via dues cards and proof of information and everything like that. I have no way of verifying on paper that Rhit is a Mason. I've never seen his dues card. And I know, or to my understanding, I have been told that he holds an A certificate in instructing, but I've never seen it in person. I have no way of verifying on paper that Rhit is a Mason because I've never looked into that myself. But I know that he's a Mason because everybody tells me that he is because they've sat in lodge with him. And he's, been, worshipful master and all that, but, who knows? Maybe he, they're all telling me, maybe they're all just telling me that. But that's why we have to have the non-physical stuff and the trust, because can you imagine having to walk into a lodge room of 30 people and each one of the 30 people has to go to the other 29 people and pull out their dues card and check it, Oh,
or, try them or whatever. I do. I love the avouchment system to where you can vouch for brothers.
Yeah. And so it's liberating. And I've been to lodges where they never even asked for my dues card. They just said, all right, let's try you for a little bit. And,
Yeah.
I got tried and I got let in, and they didn't even have to see a dues card because, that I passed the test. So.
And I got to ask, what's the craziest question you've ever been asked on an examination? And of course, we can't give the answer, but
what's the craziest?
Have you ever been asked anything aside from like the questions in our Q&A that's we can't talk about?
Oh, you're talking about. Okay.
Well, let me give you an example.
Like, have you seen like a little blue dog or whatever?
No, like one time I was asked how many craftsmen finished the temple. So you've got to know multiple things. You have to know the lecture. You have to, of course, I have to be able to do a little math.
Yeah, I'm like trying to do the math now.
Yeah, so it was one of the weirdest questions. I had to sit down and think about it. And of course, I don't know that they wouldn't have let me in if I wouldn't have known it, but happened to, and was proud to sit down and get it right. But it was like, wow, I've never heard of that question before. He also asked me if the principal character was buried or cremated. It was like, man, you get deep.
And that's a fair question too.
No, that's what I was, because I've had a few, most examinations I've had, they'll ask me the grips or something like that, or maybe the Tyler's Oath.
Yeah, I've been to some most of the examinations that I've had are very simple. But, usually you don't need a whole lot.
No, you don't. You can prove it pretty quick. Okay, I digress.
Let's talk about the northeast corner.
Yeah, this one's been one of my favorites for a long time. It's a custom that's been going on forever. And it's such a great topic to start researching because there's just there's so much research on it, first of all, and there's just so many cool little factual tidbits about it that, make that northeast corner special.
Absolutely. And it's kind of where you get your start as a Mason. Obviously, you have your start immediately after the obligation, but it's kind of that moment where as an entered apprentice, we kind of hand you the keys to the kingdom and go, hey, this is the most important stuff.
Yeah, we're starting to teach you, because something Larry said last night about we're the only group that give you your degrees before you deserve it really hit home with me. Oh, and it is. And it's the way it's supposed to be, because we're teaching you as what you need to do. So as an EA, you learn, you lay your cornerstone in the northeast corner. As a fellow craft, you learn about 7 liberal arts, and as a master, you learn about other things. And until you learn all that, you don't start practicing. So you don't actually lay your cornerstone until you are a master mason. Because it's like you said, you're not ready for what you're getting until it's complete and you start on your journey. Mm-hmm. So it was really, that part hit home with me to where it's like, he's right. It's just kind of a teaching moment. But, we're taught that, and it makes total sense that you put when they used to build buildings, it was like almost like Legos that just push one block up against another. Mm-hmm. So if that first block is laid just perfect, the rest of, it's just bam, bam. The rest of them just go in place.
But one imperfection.
Yeah. If you mess that cornerstone up, though, and lay it a little askew, you may not notice it until you get halfway or almost or even done with the building, that it's like, oh, no, this isn't square. It's not going to stand for very long.
Good luck.
Yeah, the first big thunderstorm, it's going down.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about the northeast corner is that, we've been talking about the sun and light and circumambulation and all this stuff, which, obviously after last night's talk with Fitzpatrick, I'm just kind of going, this is just drilling itself into my brain. But, we talk about the north being Masonically, it's dark time. It's darkness. When you're circumambulating, it's representative of nighttime. There's no officer stationed directly in the north, that kind of thing. However, when you're placed in the northeast corner, we talk about the east being where the sun rises, and the north, if the north is midnight, then the northeast corner are those few hours just before sunrise. It's the dawn, just before sunrise. Like, you wake up and the sun's not up yet, but you can see the sky starting to turn different colors. And you're out of the ranch and you got a cup of coffee and a cigarette in your hand and you're looking at it and you're ready to start the day. That's the coolest visual I have of just being ready. Like you got up before the sun did, but it's about to hit you. No,
so. And I love the talk that Brad gave, where you're placed over there, and if you think back to your EA, how your feet were placed, they're kind of set up to where you can take either a step toward the light or you can take a step toward the dark. You're in that perfect spot, the northeast corner. You can go east, you can go north, the way your feet were placed anyway. So it's got a lot of symbolism in it for sure. And one of the things that I loved when I was researching it is that, there were cultures that most cultures that built big buildings like that build them all astrologically. So, the cornerstone, if I'm not mistaken, it was laid on the equinox, and they would put that stone and lay it to where the sun would split the corner. So it would be exactly light on one side, shadow the exact amount, same amount. And so it would end up being a calendar of sorts, to where they would know, hey, when the sun splits that corner on the cornerstone, it's the equinox, and days are going to start getting longer from the northeast corner. It should have been longer. I think it was the other corner that signified shorter days.
Yeah, how cool is that, though?
What's interesting?
Yeah.
What's interesting is, so when I was reading in Pike's Esoterica, he talks about that originally the first stone that was laid was not in the northeast corner, but it was in the southeast corner. Like if you look at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., or if you look at Girard College in Philadelphia, you see that the cornerstone is actually in the southeast corner. And he actually references in the minutes of the Marquis de Granby Lodge in Durham, in England, in their minutes for the 2nd of February, 1742, they record that the brethren went in procession and leveled the foundation stone in the southeast corner of a new building intended for a lodge room.
Huh.
Interesting.
Explain that. So the north side of a lodge was intended to be the side of apprentices. It was a concern to most people, because most people would then be apprentices as you work up. It's almost like a pyramid. You have the apprentices on bottom, fellow craft in middle, masters are at the very apex. The majority of the lodge would be apprentices, and they would form a line on the north side of the lodge room. And on the east side of that line would be placed a rough ashlar. And that's where the new apprentice was conducted to. He was conducted to that corner to work on the roughest ashlar. And he would start by striking 3 blows with a hammer on the rough ashlar. And when you think about it, he starts in the east as he progresses his way. He then goes until he's finally in the west, at which side he transitions to the other side. The south side was the side for fellow crafts. And he would progress his way, creating more and more perfect stones until he gets to the east, the southeast side of line, which would be the perfect ashlar. And that would be the stone that you would start the building with. Because once you hit that point, the only place to ascend to is to then sit in the east as the master of the lodge. We would place them there because that is the first step in their Masonic journey, is on that very roughest.
Yeah. That's reminiscence of some things that Larry said last night. Man, that presentation got me fired up.
Yeah, he talked about how as entered apprentices, the northeast corner was important to us, and in some jurisdictions that use different ritual, as fellow crafts, the southeast corner was important, which I think that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But we're associating one of each of the corners with the Saints John. The northeast corner we're associating with St. John the Baptist. The southeast corner we're associating with St. John the Evangelist. And forgive me, the whole Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn thing. Rick, can you help me out here?
No, because I'm getting them backwards in my head.
Billy, how about you?
Capricorn's on the south, if I'm not mistaken, and Cancer's on the left, because Cancer's a water sign, and that's John the Baptist. At least they line up. Anyway, not that I'm saying he's represents water. I got in a good debate with Brad about that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing. I just pulled up the form of the symbolic lodge diagram. Tropic of Cancer's on the north side, and Tropic of Capricorn is on the south side.
Yay! I knew something.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So for anyone that has a monitor, it is worthwhile to look at that in terms of this discussion for the northeast corner and all of the astrological stuff that we've been kind of touching on. It's very important, and it's all very visual, so we apologize for that.
Yeah. We'll get the visuals one day.
I don't know. I don't want anybody to have to look at my ugly mug.
Oh, no, I'm not going live myself. But see, I think there's ways we could do it without us being on the screen.
Fair enough.
We could feed something in eventually, but that's way down the road.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. In the northeast corner, we've got that cornerstone. This is just really neat to talk about when Lightfoot talks about the nature of a cornerstone. The squareness of its surface is emblematic of moral force. Its cubic form is emblematic of firmness and stability of character, and the peculiar fineness and finish of the material is emblematic of virtue and holiness, showing that the ceremony in the northeast corner of the lodge was undoubtedly intended to portray, in the consecrated language of symbolism, the necessity of integrity and stability of conduct, of truthfulness and uprightness of character, and of purity and holiness of life, which just at that time and in that place the candidate was most impressively charged to maintain. Which, that's cool, But we teach and looking back on it, I still think that the story that's told in the northeast corner is still one of the most important lessons, if not the most important. But
no, it's right up there because, like we said, if that doesn't get done right, nothing's going to be right. It's got to be precise.
Actually, I did find something interesting from the Vermont Lodge of Research talking about topics of Cancer and Capricorn. Is in their paper Esoteric Symbolism of the Masonic Two St. Johns. They talk about the Greeks describing the Tropic of Cancer being the gate of man and the Tropic of Capricorn being the gate of God. And so they begin traveling through the gate of man to life, and around to the Tropic of Capricorn, and the ascent of man, the ascent of God would essentially message through to the hereafter, to the after.
One of the cool things, that we do as a Grand Lodge, obviously not we, because I'm not a Grand Lodge officer of any kind, but I'm talking more about the general institution of Grand Lodges, is that they consecrate cornerstones. It's a service that you can actually request from the Grand Lodge of Texas or any other Grand Lodge. under whose jurisdiction you may be. If you are building a new building, you can approach the Grand Lodge, and they will come and they will help you lay the cornerstone, and they will consecrate it. And it's really cool. There's prayers, there's singing, there's like they pour corn wine and oil on top of it. It's just really neat.
I've been to a few of those, and they do rededication of cornerstones.
Now, how does that work?
It's a great way to get out in the public.
What is the rededication of a cornerstone?
It's the exact same ceremony, few minor word changes to where it's like rededication instead of laying. But like we did the Fort Worth Coliseum in the Stockyards on its 60th anniversary, maybe it was. Something like that. They even had a time capsule that they pulled out. We had some stuff. They, had stuff in it. And then a time capsule they put in.
So the time capsule that they pulled out, they found a perfectly preserved set of Twinkies. Yeah. That stuff won't decay, ladies and gentlemen, if you put it in a time capsule.
No, if I remember right, there was of course, a bunch of documents and newspapers and coins, but there was somebody put a vial of wine or something in there that ended up leaking all over the documents and
what a bummer,
smudging a lot. I was like, who put that in a time capsule?
That's such a bummer.
Oh, Jeb, come on. Wait a minute. I want to put some whiskey in there.
I just want to put some of my shine in the cornerstone.
Yeah, that's probably what it was, some moonshine. Of course, it wouldn't have been moonshine then, but, yeah, it would have. It was only 50 years ago.
Yeah. One of the cool things that I like about the northeast corner, and this is unrelated to the cornerstone itself, unrelated to physical cornerstone, but, we talk about, and I'm not going to phrase this the way that it's phrased, but we talk about how it's important because the youngest entered apprentice has to be put in the northeast corner, right? He's the youngest guy. He doesn't know anything yet. We have to teach him. So he's the youngest guy. Therefore, we put him in the northeast corner. However, the cornerstone of a building is the first stone of the building, right? It's the very, like we just, we've been talking about it. Everything is based off of the cornerstone. And to me, I have a little bit of personal bias, so I tend to look for Christian symbolism within the degrees, even though they are quote unquote non-sectarian. Mm-hmm. To me, this is a very clear reference to, so the youngest entered apprentice. Who's he? He's the last member. And to me, this is a very clear reference to the first shall be last and the first shall be last and the last shall be first. So it's a very Matthew kind of idea. So that's just something I saw when I was doing the work, learning the stuff for my Entered Apprentice catechism. I was sitting there, and I just had this moment when I finally kind of like memorized the answer, and I was kind of mulling over it in my head, and I went, "Oh wow, like that's what this is," And so it may not be that for everybody, but that's what it is to me. And
I think we miss a lot of good discussions, because we hear the rule, no politics or religion in lodge, which, in lodge, that's true. But when you're sitting there philosophizing with your brothers about it, they should be, even if they're of a different faith, both of you should be open enough to hear how it relates to their religion, because that's what it's meant to do. It's in our monitor that it's so interwoven with religion, that it's should strengthen that and echo those truths. Or reinforce those truths that you find in your religion. Just if it doesn't, it's the wrong group.
Absolutely. And, since we've been talking about the cornerstone and how it symbolizes, progression from darkness to light, if you can't respectfully have a discussion with your brothers about religion, their religion and everything like that, and respectful, then you need to look at that cornerstone again and think about coming out of darkness into light.
This is just the truth. That is the truth. All right, boys. Gabe, you got a quote?
I do. This week's quote is not a fraternal quote. I just wanted to make that clear because I don't always have a fraternal quote of the week. Sometimes it's a quote of the week. So I trust the symbol that is arrived at in the making of the painting. Meaningful symbols aren't invented as such. They are made or discovered as a symbol later. And that's by the painter Richard Diebenkorn. So just thought that was kind of interesting. Good symbols don't need to be turned into, the good symbols don't need to be constructed as symbols. We should find meaning in things that are already there. So guys, closing thoughts. Billy, how about you?
So I guess the only closing thought I had is these conversations, right? I mean, I like studying on symbolism. I think the exchange of ideas of what we each have found about things helps to illuminate the subject even more. For anybody out there who needs to know more about symbolism and just hasn't brought it up, I would say go bring it up. People who will give you more information, more light about any subject that you're interested in. I think as you learn more about these symbols, not only will they make you a better Mason, but they'll make you a better person as they illuminate teachings that you can integrate into your everyday life.
No, it's no doubt. I couldn't agree more. I think that is, if anything from all of these podcasts, I think we highlight the importance for you to study on your own, but more to be able to share that with your brothers, because it's almost close, but not pointless to research that if you don't have somebody to bounce it off of and talk to about it to explore it further, because two brains are better than one, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and as always, brothers, I just encourage you all to keep looking for light and symbolism and any meanings that you can find. And we've talked about the idea of contemplating all of this, sitting down there and just meditating on like one symbol or whatever, and keep doing that. It's just a really phenomenal practice. Another thing that we can talk about is guys like Larry Fitzpatrick. Reach out to your Grand Lodge, whether you're Grand Lodge of Texas or another Grand Lodge out there. See who's on your education committee. Who can reach out to y'all and provide you with an in-person speaker or an educational video or something like that. Because these are the kinds of conversations, that we need to be having. And your Grand Lodge has a lot of resources that are not often tapped. So
you got it. A lot of times they'll do it for dinner, and it'll change your Masonic journey for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, boys, I'm ready to wrap this up. I got to go get kiddos.
Sounds good.
This is Rhit Moore signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.
And this is Gabriel Jagush signing off.